Good morning, Dopey. Your favorite podcast. Now able to show.
Good morning, Dopey, and welcome to another episode of Good Morning, Dopey, where we take our deep yet ultimately very shallow dive into the great book of daily reflections. And we are joined today from the West Coast, Dopey bestie, journalist, soon to be published author, the great Emily Sullivan St. Martin. Welcome to Good Morning, Dopey.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Are you kidding me? It's always a pleasure. So we're reading these daily reflections. You ready? This is February 18th.
What year?
Great.
It's every year.
Oh.
It's the same. Oh, Howie wants to be in it. And there's Howie, Dopey producer, Howie.
Right.
Emily,
Hi.
that's Howie.
Hi.
Anything
I've heard so much about you.
Anything you want to add, Howie? Anything you want to add about, Emily, something you should know about Howie.
Yeah.
He's never had a drink or smoked a joint,
Right.
taken anything
Played
ever.
the ukulele?
He never played the ukulele?
Never. Right.
What do you think, Emily?
What do you
Don't give a
do? I don't understand.
He also never played
Literally
Dungeons and
nothing.
Dragons. He never played video games. He's a mystery.
Yeah.
Howie, what do you do? What did you do?
I obsess about the fact that you ruined those headphones.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
He has some kind of mental illness buried in there. There's something going on in
There's
there.
something up.
Just
All right,
not
so-
our variety, right?
It's a different variety of mental illness, but yet it's still kind of the
It's
same.
endearing.
You know how it goes. So here we go. Today is February 18th. Our paths are our own. There was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. My first attempt at the steps was one of obligation and necessity, which resulted in a deep feeling of discouragement in the face of all those adverbs. Courageously, completely, humbly, directly, and only. I considered Bill W. fortunate to have gone through such a major, even sensational spiritual experience. I had to discover as time went on that my path was my own. After a few 24 hours in the AA fellowship, thanks especially to the sharing of members in the meetings, I understood that everyone gradually finds his or her own pace in moving through the steps. Through progressive means, I try to live according to these suggested principles. As a result of these steps, I can say today that my attitude toward life, people, and towards anything having to do with God has been transformed and improved. I know that you had a lot of experience around 12-step stuff, and what do you get out of this reading?
Well, I definitely related with the beginning where it's like you go to these meetings and it can be hopeful yet discouraging in many ways.
Sure.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. And what about, do you think that you had any kind of, did the spiritual aspect of the program appeal to you at all?
Sure. Yeah, I wasn't really turned off by the spiritual aspect. Yeah, no, I think being spiritual is a beautiful thing. And the thing that I love about just the concept of being spiritual is it doesn't really, apply to any one single religion. You can be spiritual and not really adhere to organized religion at all.
No, it's just some kind of faith in interconnectedness in the universe. It doesn't need to be anything religious or even theological or dogmatic or anything. It's just connectedness to other shit, which I love too. All these things are very wordy and difficult. I'm going to read it again.
Even my story about getting smacked on the back of the head by the ghost of my dad, that was a spiritual epiphany for me, It
was definitely a spiritual happenstance. You get hit, but you don't have the epiphany. You run and you get dope. When does it become an epiphany later on at some point?
Well, I think that just because you have an epiphany doesn't mean that you necessarily act on it in that moment. I certainly did have an epiphany. I just wanted to get well first before I faced the epiphany.
Right.
So
Right.
it was
And
like, this is an epiphany. I'll get well, and then I'll realize and like think about that and process my way through it.
right. And that's kind of what this thing is saying, that he says, I considered Bill W. fortunate to have gone through such a major, even sensational spiritual experience, which is similar to the one that you were describing. I had to discover as time went on that my path was my own. Like, I think that I didn't have a great spiritual, like, I didn't have any spiritual intervention by any means. My spiritual awakening was over time. It was like a measured spiritual awakening through the work, doing the work. Spirituality came to me. Like, I grabbed for spirituality because I thought I had to, and then it kind of worked, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna embrace this because it's working in what I want it to do. But I didn't have like a guitar case hit me in the back of the head or a white light moment. Actually, I did. My spiritual moment, I was chain smoking cigarettes in my apartment on Grand Street, writing Linda an email begging her to let me smoke pot. And it was like August, and it was super hot, and I was like sweating and chain smoking and typing, and I was just like, what the fuck am I doing? And it wasn't like a guitar hitting me in the head or a white light entering the room, but I had a smoky self-realization that this was too much. That was my spirit. Howie, have you ever had a spiritual awakening? Yes.
There was one time
Yes.
when I was coming home from Hebrew school. I was very young.
Is this a true story?
Yeah. And I
Hold
came.
on. You're coming home from Hebrew school in Queens?
Yeah, I believe it was Hebrew school.
Okay.
Yeah, something. Yeah, in Queens.
Yes.
And the bus dropped me off, and I lived in an apartment building. I went into the apartment building by
Yes.
myself, and I heard noises
Yes.
in the hallway
Yes.
that freaked me out.
Uh-huh.
Like, ooh, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Freaked me out. And I pounded on the door.
Uh-huh.
I pound or pounded?
You pounded.
Interesting.
You pound on the door, or
Yeah.
you pounded on the door. If it's in Emily's the writer.
Oh,
You
pound would be present tense.
It's pounded, right, Emily?
pounding.
Yeah,
would
it's
be
like I
present.
pound on the door or I pounded.
Either
Yeah.
works.
Okay, good. All
You're
right,
fine.
that's the story.
Keep going.
No, I pounded on the I pounded on the door, and my mom opened it. She's like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I heard all these voices and whatever." And then obviously she said, "Well, there aren't any voices in the hallway, so something's going on there." And I think I remember very vaguely thinking to myself, I did something wrong, I think, at Hebrew school. And that was sort of like, maybe I was feeling guilty about it. I remember having this thought back then. It's so vague now because it was 100 years ago. But it was
How old
like,
were you?
I must have been like 9, 10, something. I was young enough that like, it scared me.
Can I just say this is the least spiritual story I've ever
No,
heard?
but hold on, the
He's
spiritual.
10, he gets scared of some voices. You're living in an
Yes.
apartment building. There's always voices in the
No
hallway.
voices. It's a small apartment building.
Okay.
Howie's
The spiritual-
interpretation of spiritual is ooh.
It was that, and then I remember thinking like, I did something wrong,
Uh-huh.
and God was listening or something,
Yes.
and this was a way of like scaring the shit out of me and getting me to correct course and don't do that again. And it scared the shit out of me.
And he never did another bad thing. Have you ever encountered the ghost of Christmas past? I'm sure it's just some old lady and like,
There's no old lady. It was like
Howie.
a voice in my head,
close the
but it
door.
was very real.
Huh?
It was very real. It was very like spiritual.
It doesn't sound spiritual at all. It
It's
It
spiritual.
sounds like a scary story, like a ghost story, but not a story about. Howie, do you not know what spirituality is?
I guess I don't. Give me an example.
No, that's it. Thank you, Emily. This is a wonderful. Emily, you want to
waste of
educate?
time.
You want to educate my misanthropic Jewish friend?
Well, okay. So I remember you once tutoring me on spirituality when I was like losing my shit over, I don't know, some editors giving me a hard time. Do you remember this? And I was
Yes.
like texting you constantly, like, I'm going to lose my mind. What's happening to me? Blah. And you were like, Emily, this is what you need to do. I know this is going to sound corny, but I want you to pray for these people. And I want you to just hope that they're okay. All this stuff. And I was like, this is the dumbest advice ever. And you were like, just try it out tonight. See how you feel tomorrow.
And
It did
I mean,
work.
I think I felt better. I don't know.
It worked. Are you kidding me? Of course it works. That always works.
It worked, yeah.
It always works. Thank you, Emily.
Hey,
Thank you for
yeah.
bringing my spirituality back full circle and not giving Howard any sort of praise for his lack
That's
of
very
spirituality. His queen's Semitic ghost story, his Semitic spirit story in Queens. Ooh, spooky Queens.
I like it. I thought it was cute. I like it.
Howie's very cute. All right, thank you, Emily. Thank you, Howie. That was wonderful. Stay strong, Dopey Nation, and fucking toodles for Chris.
Toodles for Chris.
Dopey, I'm face down on the floor. Dopey, please sir, can I have some more? Dopey,